Hey there, welcome. In today's lesson, you are going to be doing a full academic IELTS writing test under timed conditions. But don't worry, I'm going to be there to help you along the way. Now, if you're doing the general IELTS test or preparing for the general IELTS test, then just skip academic task 1 and move directly to task 2. However, if you're doing the academic IELTS test, then what I suggest you do is watch this video in its entirety and you can write your answers for task 1 and task 2 in the comment section below. And what I'll do is I'm going to choose one task 1 and one task 2 to give some feedback to in the future. Okay, so we're going to be using this graphic for task 1. It's a process diagram describing how to make a bottle of wine. Now, the rubric says the diagram below shows the stages involved in producing one bottle of wine, and the instructions, which will always be the same, are going to say, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. You're also going to have the word count, which is going to have a minimum of 150 words. So it says, write at least 150 words. Remember, you can definitely write more than 150 words, but you shouldn't write less than 150 words. Okay, so imagine we get a graphic like this. The first thing we're going to do is analyze the graphic. So if we have a process diagram like this, what I suggest you do, first of all, is think to yourself, how many stages are there? Okay. In this graphic, so describing how to make a bottle of wine, we have 8 stages. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next thing you're going to look at is what is the first stage. So you can see that here. The first stage is picking grapes. What is the last stage? So the last stage is here. It's when the wine bottles are sent to the supermarket to be sold. Now the next question is a little bit more difficult. Are there any logical ways to divide the stages? Now we're looking for logical ways to divide the stages because that's what we're going to use when we choose how to break up our paragraphs. Now a good idea for process diagrams is to look for a stage or between stages when there's a lot of time that passes. So for example, here we can see that just after in the fermentation process, there's a 2-week gap. So this might be where we decide to start a new paragraph. Or maybe here as well, after the wine is left in barrels for a longer period. Okay, next question. What other key features are there? So we're going to look at this graphic. We've identified the first and last step, and we've identified that there are 8 stages. Now, another key feature of this graphic is this. At 3 of the stages, waste is sent to be composted, and an examiner is going to be looking out to see whether you identify that and put that in your overview and in your body paragraphs as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is look at some useful language for writing this answer. So this is a process diagram. The whole thing is just called a process diagram. So we can refer to this graphic as a process diagram when we write our introduction. Next, a single bottle of wine. So instead of saying one bottle of wine, we can say a single bottle of wine. So that's a synonym. An 8-stage process. So that's a nice noun phrase. We can say this is an 8-stage process, or the process diagram shows an 8-stage process of making a bottle of wine. Okay, so we can see there's the final stage. The grapes are picked, so we can see that in stage 1, or in step 1. Stage and step are useful synonyms. So in step 1, the grapes are picked. Now you'll notice that's the passive form, and we often use the passive form when we're writing an answer for a process diagram. We don't say someone picks the grapes because we don't know who picks the grapes. So we say the grapes are picked in the passive. Next, Waste is produced at 3 stages. So we can see that here, here, and here. The waste is produced at 3 stages. Again, this is the passive form. The waste is sent to be composted. So again, a passive form is sent to be composted. This is all vocabulary and language that you can use when you're writing your answer, which you're going to be doing soon. Next, the juice is left to ferment for 2 weeks. So you can see that here in stage 3. The juice is left to ferment for 2 weeks. So as you can see below, ferment just means when fruit is left for a period of time and turns into alcohol. This is called fermentation. Next, sent through a filtration process. So we can see that here in stage 5. We can say the wine or the juice is sent through a filtration process, or the liquid is sent through a filtration process. Okay, so that's a way that we can take a word like filter and then change it slightly, which is ultimately what we want to do. So instead of saying the juice is filtered, we can say the juice is sent through a filtration process. Next, produces residual waste. Again, that you can see that at the 3 stages, in stage 2, after stage 4, and just after stage 5. So the stage 2, 4, and 5 produce residual waste. And residual just means extra, so extra waste. Is sent to be stored in barrels. So that's step number 6. In step number 6, it says leave in barrels. So we're going to slightly change that language. We can say it is sent to be stored in barrels. Next, the wine is ready to be bottled. So we can see that in stage 7. It is ready to be bottled. Okay, again, a passive form. We don't know who bottles the wine. We just say it is ready to be bottled, or it is bottled. Finally, ready to be sent to supermarkets to be sold, and we can see that in stage 8. So you can use this useful vocabulary when you're writing your answer. Now, what you're going to do is write your answer for this task, and you're going to do that under timed conditions. So the British Council and IDP suggest that you spend 20 minutes on this task. And remember, you need to write over 150 words. So your time for this task starts now. Good luck. Hey there, welcome back. So now we're going to be writing our answer for task 2. So let's have a look at it. Electric vehicles are considered to be less harmful to the environment than petrol and diesel vehicles. What prevents individuals from choosing electric vehicles? Discuss some ways to encourage people to buy electric vehicles. Okay, so this is our task, and the instructions are going to be always the same. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. And how many words do you have to write for task 2? You need to write at least 250 words. So remember, yes, you can write over 250 words, but don't write less than 250 words. Okay, like task 1, the first thing we're going to do is analyze the question. And the first thing that I'd like you to consider is, what kind of question is it? So remember, there are different IELTS questions that appear. So for example, it could be an agree, disagree essay, advantage, disadvantage questions, a discussion question, a direct question, or in this case, it's a double question. So it's a problem solution question. We have to identify the problems that stop people from choosing electric vehicles and then identify some solutions to encourage them to buy electric vehicles. Okay, so the first thing you want to be doing is identifying what kind of question you've got in your IELTS writing test. Next, what are the key words? So the key words are going to be words that help you to understand the question. Things like electric vehicles, petrol and diesel vehicles. What prevents individuals from choosing electric vehicles? Discuss some ways to encourage people to buy electric vehicles. Now, the key words are just words that will help you to answer the question and understand what the question is asking you to do. The next thing that we need to do when we're thinking about this question is think, how should I structure my essay? Now, you don't really have a lot of time to write a full plan in the actual IELTS test, but what I suggest is that you become familiar with the different question types and learn some structures that work for you. So here's a structure that we could use for this particular essay. We're going to use a simple structure which has an introduction, body paragraph 1, which answers question 1, body paragraph 2, which answers question 2, and then finally the conclusion. Remember, your essay must always have a conclusion. Okay, in the introduction we're going to introduce the topic, and we're potentially going to introduce the problems and solutions. So we're going to introduce the topic in the sense that we paraphrase the question, and then we might want to introduce the problems and solutions that we're going to mention in our body paragraphs as well. In body paragraph 1, we're answering question 1. So we need the first problem that we're going to write about, and then a development, and ideally a link as well. And then a second problem that we identify, and then a development for that as well. In body paragraph 2, we're answering question 2. So in this paragraph, we're going to be looking at the solutions. Now remember, it says discuss some ways to encourage people to buy electric vehicles. So not just one way, we're looking for ways. So let's give the examiner 2 solutions. So we're going to have solution 1 and its development, and solution 2 and its development. Finally, in the conclusion, we're just going to summarize the problems and solutions. And remember, if you're running short of time, don't bother summarizing the problems, just summarize the solutions that you've mentioned in your answer. Okay, let's plan in a little bit more detail and brainstorm some ideas. So question 1 asks us what prevents individuals from choosing electric vehicles, and question 2 asks us to discuss some ways to encourage people to buy electric vehicles. So first of all, let's look at question 1. What prevents individuals from choosing electric vehicles? So we need to brainstorm some ideas that we can mention in our essay. So what are the reasons that people don't buy electric vehicles? Well, some people think they are too expensive. Other people think they're too complicated to use. They're kind of opaque compared to using diesel or petrol vehicles. They're not easy to charge. There might not be charging stations around where you live, but there's always going to be lots of petrol stations. If you want to make a long distance trip, then maybe an electric vehicle isn't right for you. Or maybe some people worry that they are unreliable. So we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 problems or 5 reasons why people don't choose to buy electric vehicles. But we don't need 5, we only need 2. So let's get rid of 3. So we're left with 2 ideas. We've got too expensive and too complicated to use. Now what we're going to do is when we write about the solutions, we're going to think of solutions that refer exactly to these 2 problems that we've identified. So in terms of electric vehicles being too expensive, well, how can we solve this problem? Maybe the government can provide grants, loans, and subsidies to electric car drivers. So a grant is when the government gives you money. You typically don't have to pay it back. A loan is when the government gives you money or an organization gives you money, but you do need to pay it back. And subsidies is when the government or a different organization will give money to the producer of something so that they can keep the costs down. So this solution directly resolves the problem with electric cars being too expensive. However, we need 2 solutions. So we're also going to come up with a solution for this problem. They're too complicated to use. So how about this solution? Maybe we can give clear instructions on how to use electric cars. It's not rocket science, it's a very easy solution to mention. Remember, you don't have to think of the cleverest idea for IELTS essays. Ultimately, having a simple idea that's easy for you to explain and easy for you to conceptually think of is a much better idea. Okay, so now we've got our problems and we've got our solutions. Next, let's look at some useful language for writing this essay. So how about this? Many people are discouraged from making the shift to electric cars because. Okay, this is a useful phrase that we can use in our introduction. These obstacles can be overcome by. Okay, so a good way to identify what our solutions are. Electric vehicles tend to be much more expensive. So I like that, tend to be much more expensive, instead of saying they are much more expensive. We like this kind of hedging language, like tend to be much more expensive. Electric vehicles are less straightforward. So instead of saying they are complicated to use, we can say that they are less straightforward. So straightforward means easy to use. Get their car serviced. Okay, so every so often people need to take their car and get it serviced, so make sure that everything is working properly. Maybe people don't know how to get their car serviced if they have an electric car. I would suggest 2 ways to encourage people to choose electric cars. Okay, so this is a useful phrase for introducing our solutions in the second body paragraph. Incentivize people to choose electric vehicles. So incentivize is a useful verb for problem and solution essays. Grants, loans, and subsidies. So we've already mentioned what these are. Grants are when you give somebody money and they don't necessarily have to pay it back. Loans are when you do have to pay back the money, and some subsidies are when you give money to the producer so that the producer can keep their costs low. Okay, now that we've analysed the question and we've looked at some useful vocabulary for this essay, you've got 40 minutes to write your answer. You can write it in the comment section below. Best of luck. Okay then, how was that? If you've written your answers in the comment section below, then in the near future I'm going to be looking through those and I'm going to be choosing one task 1 and one task 2 to write feedback for. And also have a look in the description below because I've provided a link to a model answer for task 1 and for task 2 as well. If you like this kind of video, then let me know in the comment section, and you can always give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Best of luck with all of your studies, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye then.